Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us this evening as we kick off our Wish SBIR info session for the month of March. Happy International Women's Day. We want to thank you for, out of all of the events that are happening tonight and just joining us this afternoon to really learn more about SBIR funding opportunities and hear from amazing individuals that are have gone through the process and are doing their own startups and businesses. So a little bit about the info sessions. We are providing focused information and introducing past WISH, current hackathon participants to funding sources for their early stage ideas. And so the purpose of these info sessions are just to expose, educate, and also provide information for these opportunities that are out there. The vision of WISH is to facilitate women entrepreneurs to develop and commercialize the brightest new ideas in science and healthcare, all while teaching the entrepreneurial process and igniting confidence in launching and funding startups of their own. So with the WISH network and ecosystem, we really want to just encourage, create community, provide education, and also have opportunities like this to really inform and also encourage individuals to apply and launch their startups. So before beginning, I just wanted to give a quick overview of the 2022 event report. We had 70 hackathon participants, virtual and on-site, along with approximately 30 mentors, judges, facilitators, and organizers. The event took place January 14th and 15th. And this was the first time that we actually did it in a kind of a hybrid model due to the COVID uptick in cases. So it was just really interesting and really encouraging and inspiring to see all of the leaders trying to figure out how we could take this event forward, move this event forward, both virtually and in person. It was really exciting. The Wish 22 received over 100,000 quantified media impressions through our collective marketing campaigns, which also benefit our sponsors on multiple platforms and sources. And a majority of the attendees that participated in the event said that they would be very interested in attending another event or helping us run one. From the audience and attendees, initially when I heard of a hackathon, I thought that you needed to learn how to code or that you needed to know all the things about the tech world. But really, to participate in a hackathon, there was no technical knowledge required. And so whenever we looked at the applicant applications and the kind of their positions and just what they did for their careers, we had a wide array of different applicants. So we had from medical students, grad students, undergrad students, C-suite executives, dentists, doctors. So it was very interesting to see that because whenever these teams were forming, they had a lot of different kind of insights and perspectives to really create these solutions, right? And so we also had an array of affiliations represented, including the American Heart Association, different healthcare systems, universities being represented through these applications. 2022 testimonials. So we had a lot of great feedback and we also had some constructive feedback as well. But one of them is, they loved the energy, how well organized the event was, the diversity of the people, how the precautions were taken again, because it was a hybrid event. It was very accommodating, very fun. They loved the location. And so it was just a really great experience overall. And the WISH network, again, kind of like mentioned previously, we held these kind of info sessions before the event, the hackathon event. So one of the first ones was with Shireen Abdullah, who was a past hackathon participant. And she, at the time, she had kind of pitched her Yumlish idea, but now she actually is one of the startups who's been chosen as a social innovator accelerator for United Way, and she's now the CEO, and that's what she's currently doing full time. So that's really inspiring to just see how she started off as a hackathon participant, and now she has her whole career kind of from this Yumlish company. And so we heard a little bit from her story and some encouraging words of advice that she had, but also that was kind of how we started with the Wish Network. And with that, we also continue to plan doing these SBR infosessions and continuing to create this community. So if you haven't joined our LinkedIn or our Twitter, I highly encourage you to do so, as we will be posting information there, and it's an opportunity for you to also connect with other hackathon participants and women. And our next events will be April 11th at 7 p.m. and May 2nd at 7 p.m. So save the date. More information to come, but we wanted to just kind of provide those dates ahead of time so that you can keep it in your radar. And last but not least, we kind of overviewed the report, but if you're interested, that should be on our Texas Healthcare Challenge website soon. So just be on the lookout for that so that you can get more information on how the event went and maybe even spot some pictures of yourself that we have included in the event. With all that being said, thank you again for joining us this evening, and I'm going to hand it over to Lance Manning, who will begin our info session for the night. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jovelyn, and welcome everyone. Very much appreciate your efforts, Jovelyn, to help us run this event and run the WISH events that we've done over the last year or two. So I just want to start off by saying that we're glad to provide these info sessions so you can learn more about non-dilutive funding. We have a number of people who have come through our program and have worked with Health Wildcatters in various ways who have received this type of funding. In my past life, before being a director and also now working with another startup, I helped companies win the SBIR Awards, and these are the Small Business Innovation Research Grant Awards. And it's great to give them extra runway to execute on their timelines and their product visions. So, in fact, the current startup that I'm working at, we have about 2 million in our seed round that's been raised and about 1 million in non-dilutive funds. So pretty good runway for a startup to get that type of funding and try to succeed in the marketplace. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in and actually just introduce our two speakers. The first is going to be Michael Holt, and the second will be Dr. Sandra Saldana. We do have a special opportunity for all of the audience here. We will be hearing from one of our hackathon team winners who is going to talk about their team and their concept that they put together just about a month and a half ago at our event. We'll give her about 3 or 4 minutes to present and give her some real-time feedback. So that should be really exciting. So let's go ahead and start with Michael. He has been introduced to me by one of our mentors, Abe, and basically he has a great background in helping companies with non-dilutive funding. He's a business consultant himself, and I'm going to let him take it away. Michael, it's all yours. Thanks for being here to tell us more about non-dilutive funding and SBIR.
Yeah, thanks, Abe. Thanks, Lance. Thanks, Abe, for having me too. Let's see. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I'm going to run through a little presentation I have here. Just 1 second. Can everyone see my screen now?
Yep.
So we are going to be talking about small business innovation research and tech transfer research, small business tech transfer research. So the SBIR program is for small businesses, private businesses, and the STTR is more geared around existing intellectual property that universities own. This might be from a master's or a PhD program. And actually the university from your thesis paper owns your intellectual property and you have to license it from, there's a small fraction of your revenues that you license back to the university. So I do have experience with a number of different startups that have had SBIR funding or STTR funding, everything from the someone that is a PhD student that has a technology that needs to write a grant, including all the components we'll go over here shortly, to other non-technical folks I've worked with that have come from the Army and want to do a startup. So the overview of the SBIR program, it was $2 billion. It might be $3 billion now with the increases in awards they're making. So the phase one used to be 225,000. It's near 300,000 now. The phase two is $1 million, and then there's additional follow-on funding. So there are 11 or 12 agencies. The National Science Foundation is funding research, while the other 11 agencies are looking for technologies that are already built, and they know what they're looking for, and they want you to basically deliver a working prototype. So for the National Science Foundation, it's high risk, high reward. The high risk is that it's something that you really understand well how this solution has to be designed, but there's a lot of technical hurdles, and you have to show what is the current landscape of solutions, what are the shortcomings of current solutions, why the problem is so hard to solve, and the experiments that you're going to design with your team to do research on how to solve this problem. So how you sort of mitigate the high risk of this is with de-risking it with a strong technical team. The high reward is a little more straightforward. You can show different economic benefits to the economy, societal benefits for different types of people from all walks of life. Let's see here. I'm going to move on to customer discovery to tell you exactly how you're going to get the information you need for this grant. So I think a lot of people are familiar with the lean startup methodology. There's a lot of great stuff out of Stanford and Steve Blank. They actually use Steve Blank's curriculum for the National Science Foundation program. This is just conducting a lot of customer interviews, looking at a lot of different customer markets, and being able to speak to how your solution solves a problem for someone without any Google research, market research on the internet, actually being able to speak to the problem from real customer interviews. So this usually is something you would do in an accelerator. It takes a few months to have all these customer discussions. But if you do think you have a solution that is worthy of funding, what you do with the National Science Foundation is you reach out to the project manager, send them a one-pager, one on the basically just 5 or 10 sentences on the problem you're trying to solve and the background of your team and your company. If you do get invited to, if you will get a reply from the National Science Foundation or any other SBIR agency, which we'll get to. This is sort of a description of what you would send to the federal government saying, this is from one of the companies I've worked with. You'll basically explain that there are a lot of devices out there that are struggling. In this case, it's medical devices that they can't handle traditional antivirus software. So we need another way to monitor these medical devices, and a little bit of background on your team. This reply isn't from this submission grant, but there's usually standard responses from the federal government trying to focus you more on getting you ready for your proposal. So if you do get invited, you do have to get invited now by the National Science Foundation. They have actually a pitch process you have to go through. It's a little more complex, but you just need about 10 slides on your company. If you do pass this, there are registrations. These take a little while to get just because it's the government and it takes a few months. So if you want to, submit quickly, and some of these things are quarterly or biannual, you'll just want to make sure you have your registrations in order. But basically there's a 15-page proposal, and I've worked with people to develop some questionnaires of what you should be addressing in each of the 15 pages. There's a budget. You'll have to have reference cited. If you're talking about scientific things, you'll have to reference the paper of the competing solutions. You'll have to get your resumes in order. You'll have to have, because you are getting $250,000 or $1 million now for the phase 2, you have to have letters of commitment saying your team members will join. You do have to have some reference letters, and they can be anywhere from a venture capitalist to another scientific researcher to an industrial partner or a customer. The letters of support are actually very important. Definitely customer letters at the top. The second best is maybe a researcher that talks about the problems in your industry. And then, that's arguable with like a reseller or a partner who says that they could sell this product. Probably the least is a venture capitalist, but they'll be able to speak to why they think this industry is important, why they would follow on this type of project with funding, and that they'll actually support funding this, because these programs are meant to be pre-seed. So before any friends or family or there's a joke like physicians are fools that would invest in this. This is stuff that isn't funded by seed investors or even Series A investors. This is very early stage research, at least with the National Science Foundation. So if before we, let's see how far we are in, 21 minutes. So I have a number of sample proposals where we talk about where we talk about these different technologies and the overview of it, the intellectual merit, the broader impacts. So with these proposals too, you'll have like a Gantt chart, which you show week by week or month by month what you're working on. Also, we had to do accounting of these grants. So there's a lot of different policies and procedures and ways you have to structure your accounting and finances for basically grant management. But with that amount of money, you can find ways. They train you how to manage this amount of money. And from time to time, people ask me questions here or there, how you're supposed to account for something. So you'll have all your registrations. Previously, we built sort of foldering systems and sample documentation on how to apply for the grant and manage the grant. So here are a number of people. It was funny, I always show this. We were doing some financial accounting on Christmas. I'm dreaming of administrative and financial Christmas. And then a couple of people that were pretty excited that their award was accepted. So I think it's about 20 minutes in. We're going to do some more open Q&A. We're going to go through some of the government websites. We're going to go through the National Science Foundation website and a number of the other agencies like NASA, Department of Defense, NIH. We can look up different grant types together and have some more discussions about this.
Michael, did we lose you? Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, so it looks like you paused for a little bit. Good to go on the slides, or you're stopping for now? Okay, that's fine. We do have a little bit of time here, and I'll ask Lindsay to let us know when Sandra arrives for the next presentation. But just to confirm, you're not going to show any more slides, right, Michael?
Yeah, that's all the slides for now. Let me just show the two websites that I want to show real quickly that we
Sure.
reviewed earlier this week.
Perfect. Sounds good.
Let's see.
While he's bringing those up, just want to let the audience know that we are going to be taking questions. Feel free to write those in the Q&A. We've had a question so far related to is this for the NSF? Is it the NIH? I think he was mainly showing the NSF one, but we can talk through or point you to the NIH approach, which is probably pretty similar. And then another question we got is, how mature do they want your technology? So that's one we can take at the end, but excellent question, and please add some more. So we'll turn it back to you, Michael.
Yeah, that's a great question too. So they do not want a mature technology. That's for sure. They want something that there's sort of, it's called like the Valley of Death. I think some people have heard of this, where there is scientific research, at least for the National Science Foundation. They call this the Valley of Death, where they funded a lot of the National Science Foundation research. They fund academic research departments, and there are either technologies that the university owns now that they invested maybe hundreds of millions of dollars in that they want to see commercialized. So whether you have an existing technology or you understand a problem where you can go out and design a new technology, they want to fund this because they've already had a lot invested in it. So this is the National Science Foundation website. These are the different topic areas of what they're funding right now. It's seedfund.nsf.gov. This is their portfolio page. And there's about 20 directors. A couple directors cover more than one application area. Some of these can overlap. So these are suggested, these are the areas that they're funding. And if you go into a certain topic area, you'll see advanced materials. And here's the program director. I think you can probably even download his CV to understand what his background is. So, and then they'll have certain subtopic areas. You do have to fit into a general topic area and then a subtopic. So National Science Foundation is Propose Your Innovation. It's just one of 11 agencies. And then the SBR in general, there's the other 11 agencies, Department of Defense, NIH. We'll get some more here in a second. Let's see, solicitations. So let's see, overview. We got to find the database of the grants here. It's somewhere. Topic areas. Oh, here we go. So the open solicitations right now are for Department of Commerce, including NOAA, not NASA, DOD, Health and Human Services, and NASA as well. And you can see whether it's a phase 1 or a phase 2 or SBR or STTR. It's pretty good. And basically, if we click on this one right here, this is NASA. It's a phase 1 SBIR. It's due pretty soon. So this is something that, you're not going to have a 15-page paper and budgets and resumes and references cited in addition to all the registrations immediately. So if you read about this, they'll tell you what they're looking for. It's not propose your innovation. They're going to sort of give you more directive of the solutions that they need. So a unique need exists for an exploration extra vehicle mobility unit. I guess it's a spacesuit. So basically, they're telling you what you're looking for, what they're looking for. It's more of a request for a proposal to deliver a prototype than what the National Science Foundation says. We want to learn more about advanced materials, and we want to learn more about metal and ceramics and the different properties of those and the different technologies that can be developed within them. It's more of research. So I think that's a good overview of the different type of agencies and the differences between the scientific research for the National Science Foundation and the other SBIRs, which you can look in the Health and Human Services of what they're looking for in a certain area and looking for you to basically build a prototype. So I think that's good overview to continue on with the meeting.
Great. Well, thanks, Michael. I do have some questions for you, and I'll hold those to the end. But awesome review of some of the NSF and other grant opportunities. Thanks for getting into some of the weeds of the 15 pages and the presentations and all that. So very cool. And I see that people are asking questions. Please add those to the Q&A or the chat, and we'll keep it moving. I would now like to introduce our next speaker, and this is Dr. Sandra Saldana. She has a company called Alva Health that has received funding from the Techstars Accelerator, and I believe maybe one or two other accelerators, but she has also been a recipient of the non-dilutive federal grant programs, and I believe it has helped her company immensely. So we'll hear from her now. She's also a recent native Dallas person, and we welcome you here to the area, and thank you for chiming in on our info session, and look forward to hearing more about it. Thanks.
Great, thank you so much, Lance. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today, and I'm excited to be in Dallas. I was in Houston, Texas before. When I was doing my PhD, and I'm just, it's been over 10 years, or almost 10 years since I lived in Texas. So I'm excited to be here and to connect with the network. My name is Dr. Sandra Saldana, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Alva Health. Alva Health is a Yale University technology company that has been backed by National Science Foundation and National Institutes of Health. And we are developing the first wearable device for real-time stroke detection. Our mission is to help older Americans who are living with high stroke risk to prevent disability, live independently, and to bring peace of mind to their families. So I'm not sure how familiar you are with stroke, but about 1 in 4 people over the age of 25 have some risk factor for stroke. And ischemic stroke in particular happens when a clot blocks an artery in the brain, preventing the flow of blood and oxygen. And unlike a heart attack, which is sudden and immediately painful, a stroke is more subtle. It may feel like nothing more than a slight headache, when in reality, the brain tissue is rapidly deteriorating. As a result, about 20% of people die an untimely death. That's about 160,000 people per year. And of those who are survivors of stroke, the majority of them are left with some kind of disability, and many of them having to relearn how to walk, talk, and even tie their shoes. As a result, about 35% of survivors have some kind of depression and anxiety associated with their condition, because they're no longer able to function in the way they used to before their stroke. And in addition to these massive human costs, there is about $67 billion in unnecessary healthcare spend that the US spends each year that is avoidable if patients are just treated quickly. And the reason that stroke is so expensive, excuse me, the reason that stroke is so expensive is that patients are left disabled. They're having to, to hire home help, have physical therapy. They have extended hospital stays. Excuse me. And a lot of them are, unfortunately, have a lot of remaining conditions that have to be dealt with because of the stroke. The good news is that all of this can be prevented if patients are just treated quickly using one of the available therapies. Since 1995, the US has had TPA, tissue plasminogen activator, which is a clot buster. It's been FDA approved since then. But because stroke is so difficult to detect today, only about 90% or only about 10% of victims get this life-saving therapy. So we've got 90%, the majority of stroke victims, who are not getting to the hospital in time to receive treatment. And so this is, it's a problem that has a solution. And so that's what we're doing at Alva Health. We are developing a wearable device for real-time stroke detection. It consists of 2 wristbands containing sensors similar to those that you would find in a smartwatch. And essentially, we look for the onset of hemiparesis, which is one-sided paralysis, and it's one of the hallmarks of stroke onset. So our algorithms are based in the cloud. We are continuously sampling data from the wristbands. They're sent to the phone, and then from the phone up to the cloud, where our algorithm is working around the clock in real time and looking for these signs of hemiparesis. So when we detect that there is abnormal activity, we immediately notify the user. If there's no response within 2 minutes, we'll connect them with a trained medical responder in a call center who will then call 911 and notify the user's emergency contact. And the purpose is for the patient to get to the hospital as soon as possible. And there's studies that if the patient gets to the hospital within 90 minutes of stroke onset, they can essentially walk away as if nothing happened. And that's our vision here at Alva Health. We want to make sure that every stroke victim gets treatment and avoids these horrible side effects. We have done a lot of studies in the clinic. Our main 2 studies took place in Connecticut at Yale New Haven Hospital. Our first study was in stroke patients, where we recruited people who've already had stroke, and essentially we trained an algorithm to recognize the wearable data and to classify it and to determine whether the wearables data indicates a stroke or not. And our algorithms that we have so far are able to detect stroke with a 97% true positive rate or sensitivity, essentially, in moderate to severe strokes. So these are the strokes that would typically be treated with that drug that I mentioned earlier, TPA. Now, our second clinical study was performed in healthy volunteers at Maplewood Senior Living, which is an assisted living facility, a chain of assisted living facilities in the Northeast. And here, what we did is we recruited healthy volunteers and had them wear wearable devices. And then we ran that wearable data through our algorithm. And we estimated a false positive rate of about 1 every 21 days, which is what we believe is certainly within the range that FDA would be looking for when they're evaluating our technology for FDA clearance. In addition to this clinical research that we've been doing since 2017, we have spent a lot of time creating barriers to entry. So this is really important when you're creating a new technology. We have currently 2 issued US patents. We have international filings in progress, and we've developed proprietary stroke detection algorithms. We have an extensive database of wearables data from stroke patients. We've cleared informal freedom to operate searches, and we have also trademarks in progress as well. Now, just to shift gears and talk about the market for this technology, I mentioned earlier, this is a 67 billion annual opportunity. 1 in 4 people in the US have a risk factor for stroke due to conditions like hypertension, type 2 diabetes, hypercholesterolemia, atrial fibrillation, and many other conditions that predispose someone to have a stroke. But our initial target market consists of the 1.1 million people each year who are survivors of a stroke or survivors of a mini stroke, also known as a transient ischemic attack. And the reason that we're focusing on this patient population is that once they're diagnosed with one of these 2 conditions, these patients are now considered to be an imminent risk of a recurrent event, which is likely to happen within 90 days of the primary condition occurring. And so that's our initial focus, the 90 days monitoring window following the time that someone's had a stroke or a mini stroke. About 15% of these patients will have a recurrence, and the other 15% that recur will have another event up to 5 years later. So this is our initial target market. And along the way, we've been supported through SBIR funding. We've been fully funded through SBIR up until late this past year. We've received phase 1 awards from National Institutes of Health, as well as the National Science Foundation. And then this last year, we received a phase 2 NSF grant, bringing our total non-dilutive funding to $1.6 million. So this is our timeline, our development timeline. Today, we're working on our FDA pre-submission meeting and putting together a package that we're going to send to the FDA to have a conversation with them about our regulatory pathway. Later this year, our goal is to start a clinical trial in several clinical research sites. Our first research site will be at Yale New Haven Hospital, but we're still looking for partners for the other recruitment sites as well. And then next year, we plan to perform a second clinical study, and this study will be used for essentially our FDA registration and FDA filing, which we're targeting to submit at the end of 2024, and then launch the product late that year or early 2025. This is a little bit about our team. So I'm originally a scientist trained at MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston. I did a PhD in cancer biology. Then I moved up to Boston, where I worked for a boutique branding agency doing B2B sales. So I bring that commercialization aspect. Kevin Schatz is director of the neuro ICU at Yale. He's a stroke neurologist who identified this problem. Dr. Hiten Zaveri is an electrical and computer engineer and serial inventor of neurotechnologies. And we have an excellent scientific and advisory board that essentially leads and helps guide us along the way. And then just a final slide. Lance already mentioned, we've been backed by Techstars, NSF, NIH. And then, we've along the way always tried to participate in as many, accelerators and as many programs to help improve our business, to help refine our story, and to help us be better so that we can continue, along this path and be successful in our mission to develop this wearable device for real-time stroke detection. So that's it. I'm happy to take any questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Sandra. We'll hold the questions till after our final speaker, but excellent job. And I can tell you've been through an accelerator where they preach, succinct and focused presentations and really nice graphics. So congrats, you've been able to raise funding and have an awesome story. I definitely have some questions for you. So
thank you.
Great. Well, let's go ahead and transition to the next part of our conversation. I'd like to introduce Dr. Girija Naidu, who is one of the team leaders for a group of people that were in our WISH Healthcare Hackathon event about a month and a half ago. And she has graciously accepted the invitation to tell her story and to pitch something similar to what her team pitched as winners and post-hackathon winners as well. So I'll turn it over to you, and I'm going to give you the 4 minutes as we talked about, and then we'll actually give you some feedback. So I'll ask Sandra and Michael to stay on the line and be our panelists to help vet your idea and hopefully give you some ideas on funding.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lan, for this opportunity.
So I think you're going to look for the share screen. There you go. You got it. All yours.
Is that full screen?
It looks like we can see the PDFs, but that might just be fine if you want to scroll through those.
just,
Or if you want to go to the actual PowerPoint as well.
all right, so. Okay. No. I'm sorry about this, 1 second. All right, does that work now?
We don't see anything yet. Do you have the option to select the keynote when you screen share?
Select the keynote.
Or whatever platform I believe you're using.
There we go.
Perfect.
Okay,
There we go.
welcome everyone. So we propose to reduce the consumption of PPE used by the healthcare industry using UV light technology. Every day, anyone working in a healthcare setting uses an immense amount of PPE. Why do we care? Well, in 2020, the US alone spent more than $3 billion on PPE, which includes more than 240 tons of single-use plastic medical waste, such as disposable face masks, gloves, and gowns per day at the peak of the pandemic. And the reality is that those plastic-worn face masks are still around in oceans and landfills and practically everywhere, affecting the environment and wildlife, and also contributing to the climate change crisis. And from an economic standpoint, the second quarter of 2020 alone, hospitals ran through an average of $20.40 per adjusted acute patient per day for PPE. And this was up from just over $7 per patient per day that the same group observed during late 2019. So we propose the use of a storage box that uses UV light technology to lengthen the use of PPE, thereby reducing its consumption. UV light kills bacteria and viruses with less than 2% harm to the filtration effectiveness, allowing them to be reused quickly. So we plan to design the prototype to have physical separators within the UV light box so that a single user can confidently reuse his or her own PPE without the fear of cross-contamination. So let's walk you through a use case scenario. So we have a receptionist, say, in a dermatology practice. Now, prior to the pandemic, she would greet all her patients without a mask. However, since March 2020, being conservative with our numbers, she has been using at least 1 to 2 masks a day, and that's an average of 20 to 40 masks a month. So each mask has several plastic and metal components that are less biodegradable than the average waste product. Now, with the use of Clear It, our UV box, she could reduce her consumption from 40 masks a month to 1. And her example is actually the most conservative use case in a healthcare setting. As we go up the level of care with provider, from assistants to nurses to doctors to surgeons, the consumption of PPE only increases manifold. So by lengthening the use of PPE for different providers, we are significantly reducing the cost and its impact on the environment. Our plan would be to use these boxes initially in healthcare settings. However, if we do see another surge or another pandemic altogether, we could later expand to other businesses such as banks, law firms, corporate firms, or other retail stores. And we also plan to partner with some government agencies to give incentives to the users. Now, there are several products already available that use UV light technology to disinfect different consumer items such as cell phones, baby bottles, etc. However, none are targeted for PPE. Using similar technology with these price points, if we were to design a similar product to disinfect masks and gloves and disposable gowns, the return on investment could be realized fairly quickly. So let's clear it to save the planet. That's all I have.
Great, thanks so much. You came in under 4 minutes. We didn't have to clap you off the stage.
Great, thank you.
Good. Well, let's ask our panelists if you want to go ahead and just unshare so we can see everybody. let's ask our panelists to weigh in and give you some feedback or ask you some questions on your pitch. Michael, Sandra?
Yeah, Michael here. Let's see if I can actually screen share. I found I just searched UV within the SBIR database, and for this NASA program, contamination control and planetary protection. It sounds very interesting. There's this sterilization approach for UV, so for surfaces. So this is it could be a potential grant opportunity. I have some other, feedback about the business from some real experiences, but I also told Lance that I would do sort of a search to see if I could find something for the presenter.
That'd be awesome. Thank you.
And were you able to see that screen?
Yes.
Yeah, if you want to share the link, we can also look at that. Sandra?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I love the idea. I think it's much needed because, it's something I think about often when I'm throwing out all these masks, and I wonder where they go. So it's definitely a great idea. I have a question around who pays for this product, and how do you envision, getting into facilities where this might be used?
So yeah, our target customer initially would be hospitals, and we would hope to have just like electronic cars, get a lot of incentives from the government for their users. We're hoping that this being something that's environmentally positively impacting, we could possibly get some government agencies to help us incentivize the users to actually use it. Because from what I understand, because after the hackathon, we did connect with some administrators and some local hospitals, and it was alarming to see how much more waste there is in addition to just the PPE. Like they were saying that, regular grade scissors that we would use for everyday use, those are single use as well, and a lot of surgeries. And so apparently a lot of these hospitals, the nurses feel so bad to throw these out because they're perfectly reusable. However, because it's more expensive to sterilize and disinfect them, they just toss them out. So I think it's just something that there's a huge, I think, and all the administrators that we had connected with too, they thought it was a great idea and something that, I guess a lot of the administrative staff just doesn't have the time to really research and look into, but they think there's a huge need and could really help cut costs in the hospital settings.
Great. Michael, do you have another question?
I was just thinking about my thoughts. So I have had some experience with UV, ultraviolet light, air purifiers, air disinfection. Got some traction in elder care and even a university setting. And one of the things I noticed when hospitals, and I've had experience selling into hospitals for cybersecurity, but the clinical engineers, usually the people that maintain the equipment, were saying, we're not responsible for maintaining any air disinfection. That's facilities, and it's not IT. I mean, it's not clinical engineering or biomed or clinical engineering. They're sort of pushing off to facilities. Have you seen this in healthcare where they're saying it's like a facilities problem?
Oh, I think you're on mute.
So this is still very much in the concept idea. We haven't quite had a chance to really understand the full workings of how this would be designed. But yeah, that's a great point that we should definitely look into.
Yeah, they seem to be still deciding as like hospitals who's going to be in charge for disinfection, Also, some people are starting to get FDA clearances for disinfection technology, but the FDA's guidance isn't really a traditional regulatory process. It's more of like best practices, and they'll certify you for your best practices. It's not a whole long certification process. And then the other thing that I saw repeatedly was they would say, well, we just bought this system that works with our HVAC system that uses ionizing technology. It can cover 100,000 square feet for $10,000. We don't need a device that costs $1,000. That's every 1,000 square feet. There's also a lot of science behind. I learned about these devices that were nanolight, the light bulbs that have nanolight, and they say that the claims seem like they're effective, and they're only like $1 a light bulb. So I think one of the things I've been working on with someone I'm collaborating with is a lot of the sales collateral, explaining the shortcomings of the other solutions, why those solutions don't achieve what really needs to get done. And that's a good starting point too for like a federal grant, because you're going to get a lot of sales objections. They're going to say, well, I'm using this and this, why? And I just invested in this, why should I get this too?
That's a good point. And I think what we'll do is we'll table this topic here for later. And I will ask our participants, Girija and Michael, if you'd like to join the Wish Network link that's in the chat. We can take some of these conversations to LinkedIn. And also, we'd love to have, continued conversations on it. But I would like to spend the rest of the time on SBIR questions. So thank you for that presentation, Girija. The biggest question that I saw on the chat was, how far along or how mature do they want your technology to be when you apply? So let me rephrase that, because I think on this call, we may have people who have companies and technologies that are further along. Maybe they even have customers, and some that are just a concept. So where does SBIR cut off? Is it for everybody, or is it just for the concept or idea? Either of you can answer.
I can talk about, at least from the National Science Foundation perspective, the NSF, based on my understanding, they like to fund projects that are high risk and also high reward. And so the phase 1 NSF grant essentially is a proof of concept grant that, they say you don't need to have any data. It could be a concept that is well thought through and backed up by prior research. You don't necessarily have to have your own research, though it helps. And I think that being early is not necessarily something that counts against you with NSF. I think what helps with NSF is if you do a lot of work around the commercialization potential of your technology, because in the past, NSF, was always the agency that funded these high risk, high reward projects, but a lot of the times they didn't have a commercial end to them. And so these great technologies were funded, but then they never went anywhere. And so some years ago, the NSF switched gears, and now, they want to continue funding these risky projects, but with the caveat that there has to be a commercialization potential there. And so, if you do your research and really map out the customer side of things, the payment side of things, I highly recommend doing NSF I-Core, which essentially is a business model canvas based and lean startup based program that takes you through that process of figuring out who's your customer and how you're going to get this product to the market. I think that's a really good foundation. And then the science can come later during the NSF. That's when you really de-risk the technology. So that's at least on the NSF side of things. NIH is a bit different. Based on my understanding, they they tend to be more conservative. And, the projects that I've seen funded tend to have data. They tend to have been de-risked from the technological standpoint. And now it's more of a matter of, doing clinical research or proving out the use case in the clinic. So I think NIH is a bit different, but that's how I've seen the different agencies deal with the stage question.
So it sounds like, you can have a concept, it can come out of a university, it can be from your own startup company, but you can also maybe have a company that's further along, and maybe you have a new product that you're introducing, or you're using your technology to address one of their program objectives.
Exactly.
And therefore, it doesn't matter what stage you're in. Would you confirm on that?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, great. A couple more questions here. Someone just asked NSF what? I'll ask them to maybe clarify. That's Marianne in the chat. If you want to ask that again, I'm not sure what you mean by that, but
It's NSF I-Corps.
oh, the I-Corps, yeah,
the I-Corps program.
Okay, I-CORP, yeah. In fact, my question is about that, and that is, how do you do customer interviews? I know, Michael, you talked about this briefly, but do either of you have any success stories in doing customer interviews? In other words, getting feedback, having a feedback loop on your value proposition?
Yeah, it's they recommend doing upwards of 300, but I would really just start with 10. You can start with 10 in one industry, but I even recommend after your first 10, you'll probably pick an industry that doesn't have a pain point. So let's just say that there's 12 industries out there. You want to start doing a few more in other industries. So you cover majority of the industries with 30 interviews. You might find in one industry in particular has a bigger pain point. And then once you start getting up to where they want 100, 200, 300 interviews in a certain industry, you're probably becoming a more mature company, and you're starting to learn that you have competitors, and that there might even be a minimum viable product that your competitors have designed, that they're even doing requests for proposals from those clients, where it's starting to become a very mature industry, and there's very competitive features and accesses. So it's just a way to first sort of debunk your first industry, identify what industry might have the major pain point, and then and then once you really start getting out there, you might realize that you have some really serious competition.
Great. Okay, excellent. Well, good feedback on that question. Good place to stop here. I want to thank all of our participants for joining us, for our panelists for speaking. I'm not sure if we recorded this presentation, but if we didn't, what I'd like to do is possibly send the contact information to all of our participants and registrants. So I'll ask Lindsay to consider helping with that. Perhaps those who presented, Michael, Sandra, Girija, if you want to provide your slides or a version of your slides that you feel is shareable to our audience, we'd like to follow up. So thank you all.
Reportedly, it's just FYI.
It is?
Mhm.
Okay, great. We'll send something out. So Michael, Sandra, Girija, Jovelyn, thank you all for being here. Thank you all on the line for joining us, and we'll pick it up again next month, and look forward to your involvement. And feel free to reach out to any of us. I know I'm open on LinkedIn, and happy to answer any further questions. So thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Have a good night, everybody.
Yeah,
Good
thanks,
night.
Lance.
Take care. Bye.
Right.